Today what we're going to do is take our project from last time where we had a little character that we could do drag and drop, and we're going to change it so that it's actually a button, and when you click it it'll do something. So the first thing we're going to do is go into here and we're going to remove the beetle because we don't need him anymore, and we're going to go to our website and we're going to get these images. So this is our two buttons, one's red, one's blue, and we're going to put that in our folder so that we can use those buttons. So just going to open those up. There they are. Just going to take these buttons and drag them over onto the desktop. And I'm just going to drag them back in the folder so that they're there when we start. Okay, so there we go. We got a red button and a blue button. So now we're good to take our whole solution, drop it into our integrated development. Remember, there's our images, and main is the one we're interested in. So it's lesson 5. Remember to change that and the description. Display a button. Okay, just to make sure everything works, replace beetle ship with fast acting inactive button, which means we're not touching it. And notice it has an @2x because it's a retina display button. It's 198 by 96. And 16. Oh, didn't like it again. There we go. Okay, so there's our button. Well, at the moment we can still drag it and drop it around, which doesn't really make any sense, but we're going to fix that. Okay, so first thing is this code here. It's checking for under move, which doesn't really make any sense anymore because it should really go under, there we go, under begin. So when you click on it, as soon as you touch it, at the beginning it's going to do something for us. Now it says it can move it around. That's not really making any sense anymore. So we're going to place some code here later. Okay, so we can just test that again. Well, now it doesn't do anything when we touch it, but at least it can't move around. Okay, so the long process, what we're going to have to do now is not just have one button, we're going to have two. One for the primary when we're just sitting there, and one for the secondary when we click on it. So actually, instead of typing this, always paste. So we're going to have a primary button, which is the inactive one, and as I said, we're going to have a secondary one. And it's going to be the active one, this one here. So when we touch on the button, it's going to switch to the other one. So we don't need this anymore. Key thing is, everywhere where it said my image, we're going to have to replace that with something. And we're also going to have to maintain this. We got two buttons happening. So the next thing was the my image width was based on the image. So, or on the button, it better be our primary one. Notice they have to be the same size or it's going to look a little strange. Next thing we did was take that, our image, and we assigned an X and Y location. So we should do that to these two things, but oddly enough, we want them in the exact same spot. We want one to show up, but the other one not to. And we're going to make that happen. So this is going to be replaced also with a variable. And we're going to call it button location X. And as you can imagine, the other one is going to be called button location Y. So now we have a location for our two buttons. We better actually get them to those locations. So in here, its X value is going to be assigned this. And its Y value is going to be assigned this. And we need to do the exact same thing not only with the primary button but the secondary. Remember, we need them stacked up on each other. So we're going to put them in the exact same spot. So there we go. Now we have our two buttons. Now this isn't myimage.x anymore. It's actually this. So let's go in and replace that. So that's the X location, and we have one here. And we can get the Y location. Right there. Okay, so in theory, our button should draw. Now, it's going to only have one button. It's the red one. And when we click on it, once again, it's not going to do anything, but at least it's working. So, when we click on it, what should happen? Well, the red one should go away, and the blue one should show up. Actually, it's going to be the blue one, but anyways. So, there's another property that we can use. There's a property called isVisible. So the primary button we're going to make visible, and the secondary button, as you can guess, we're going to make it invisible, or oddly enough, visible is equal to false. So now you'll notice that it's blue because it draws it in order, but this one's invisible. So when we click on it, you'd want the blue one to switch to be false and the other one to be true. So we're going to grab this code here. And remember, this is where we were going to put it. So we're going to paste it in there. Now remember, those we don't need. And we're going to switch these. Okay, so there's our blue button. When we click on it, it turns red. So that's a good first step. Except you have to understand how buttons work on an iPad. When you click on it, it should switch. That's true. But if you move off of it, it should switch back. And if you're off and touching and move over it, it should switch. And when you're on top of it and you release, that's when the action should really happen. So you got to make sure you understand how a button works. So this is good, but really what should be happening is this, oddly enough, we're going to put in move. Actually, before we're going to do that, we're going to add an else. So when you click on the button, it should switch. But if you click back into some other space that isn't the button, it should switch back. So if I click on it, it should go, but if I click over here, it should go back. Okay, so that's the first thing. So that's good. When I'm here and I click and I move, as soon as I move out, it should also switch back. So oddly enough, that's the exact same code, but it should go and move. Remember from last time? So when I'm moving around, I have my finger on the screen and I'm moving. If I'm touching the button, this should happen. But if I'm not touching the button, it should switch back. So let's check to see what happens here. So if I'm out in space, nothing happens. If I touch and hold and move out, look, it switches back and forth. That's exactly what we want. When I click here and move in, it should do something. So that's cool. And when I release, well, it should do something. So what we're going to do for the do something is we're just going to draw some text. So when you end, you should do the exact same check. Am I touching the button? If I'm touching the button, then I should do the thing that I want to do. So we're going to put it in here too. So if I end, my primary button should take control again, and my secondary one should go away. But you should also do something here. That's the something. And if you end or remove your finger and you're not touching, well, then the primary, well, it should be true too, and this should be true. So that's okay, we can leave that there. So to do something, what are we going to do? Well, why don't we just put a piece of text on the screen? We know how to put text on, so let's do that. So we have a text object, and oops, text object, and we're going to assign it display dot new text. Remember this from a long time ago. And we're going to put some words. So let's just say, we can say that you've clicked. And we have to tell it where it's going to go. So just going to see how this is, 500 and 600, and the font, and how big it is. So hopefully you remember that from the Hello World. If not, you can always go back. And don't forget, we need to set text color, and let's just set it to red. There we go. Okay, let's save that again. So there's our button. When we click out in the middle of nowhere, nothing happens. When we click and move in, it turns, but when we move out, it goes back. When we click, it moves and it goes back, but when we release, look, it tells us that we clicked. So that's the code for today. Notice it's the same kind of thing over and over again. If you're thinking, ooh, we're copying and pasting the same thing over and over again, there's got to be a better way of doing that. There is, and we're going to get there, just not right now. And that's all we're going to do for today.